Hello, and thanks for joining us for this Noonan Coweta Chamber Forum for races being held in the 2024 general election. Once early voting begins, it will conclude with Election Day on November 5th, and the forums hosted this year by the Noonan Coweta Chamber of Commerce are going to take a look at several races that are coming up that affect Coweta County. Just a note, these forums are hosted by the Noonan Coweta Chamber of Commerce, and we give great thanks to our advocacy sponsor, AT&T. I'm Dean Jackson, joined by Clay Neely of the Times-Herald, and we'll be your moderators for this event. These chamber forums feature a number of Coweta-centered races for local, state, and federal positions, including contested races or a contested race here tonight for U.S. Congress. In fact, specifically, this is for Georgia's 3rd Congressional District, which includes Coweta and counties throughout the West Georgia region, and is held currently by retiring Congressman Drew Ferguson. We have both of our candidates for this position tonight, and they include Maura Keller, Democratic challenge for this. Good to see you, ma'am.
Nice to see you, too.
And Brian Jack, a Republican challenger. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you both for coming tonight. Just a couple of notes. The Chamber of Commerce is a nonpartisan organization and does not endorse candidates for office. Questions have been submitted by Chamber members and apply equally to all candidates. Our forum tonight is intended to give voters an opportunity to hear the views of these candidates on the issues faced by the communities represented within this district and, of course, across the state of Georgia and the nation. The forum format tonight allows candidates 2-minute opening and closing statements. In between, candidates will have up to 1 minute to respond to a series of questions. After the second candidate answers the question, a 30-second rebuttal will be allowed if the first candidate chooses. Candidates will be signaled when they have about 10 seconds remaining and may finish their sentence when their time is up. We're also going to alternate who goes first on each one of our questions. And again, thanks to both of you for joining us here tonight and for choosing to run in this important election. We're going to begin now with our opening statements. We want you both to tell us a bit about yourself personally and professionally. Tell us why you're running for this seat and some of the things that are most important to you. Maura Keller, we'll start with your opening statement first.
Thank you, sir. And first, I want to say thank you so very much for the invite for tonight. So I'm a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel with 26 years. Using my military experience, I then became a strategic analyst working for the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness, working on various projects. After that, I became a healthcare worker in nuclear medicine and technology for the Atlanta VA. And the Atlanta VA is one of the reasons why I decided to run for Congress, is because I feel we are failing our veterans. I could not make and affect change. So I thought this way I could help with VA reform. I'm also committed to reproductive health care, which I feel, whether a pregnancy is planned or unplanned, carrying a child in Georgia does have risks to it, especially our Black women. We've got to make sure that we work on our infant and mortality rate for these women. We must address that whether if they have reproductive health care is so much more than just the pregnancy. It's about infertility, cancer, genetic testing. So we've got to make sure that they have every option available to them because some of these require life-saving care. And it's about the freedom to make decisions on their own bodies. My husband and I, we have lived here in Georgia for 28 years. I have 4 children, 2 grandchildren, and just like you, I want to make sure our families thrive and not just survive. I'll help make ends meet by lowering the cost of living and health care, investing in affordable housing, and bringing better paying jobs to the district. I'll make sure that when your children go to school, that they can come back safely. I know about keeping our community safe, but I can also ensure that we can do better with our Second Amendment rights. Georgia needs common sense candidates that can get the job done, and I am that person.
Thank you, ma'am. Brian Jack, your opening statement.
Well, thank you very much for tuning in tonight, especially with Game 2 of the Atlanta Braves Wild Card Series out west. So I appreciate you having an opportunity to hear from both of us and the vision that we have for our district. For me, I'm a son of our district. I grew up in Peachtree City, Georgia, in Fayette County. I'm very proud of that. And I went to school at Woodward Academy just up the road. And then I went to college at Pepperdine University, a Churches of Christ institution, a phenomenal education experience. And from there, I had a chance to go work for a movement I care a lot about, which is the pro-Israel movement. And I did that for 4 years, and obviously that relationship is needing to be stronger than ever, given what they're enduring as we speak. But I was proud to do that for 4 years. And from there, I had a chance to work for an incredible man of faith, character, and conviction. I worked for Dr. Ben Carson for a year and still serve on the board of directors of his think tank, the American Cornerstone Institute. And they do a lot of incredible work with children. They do educational series to inspire excitement and pride in our country. We have a great series called Little Patriots. You can check it out online. But then in 2016, I happened to be in Coweta County when my life changed. I joined President Trump's campaign in its nascent stages, and I've been with President Trump for the last 8.5 years. I had the privilege of working in his White House and serving in his administration from the very first to the last day of his administration. I served as his White House political director, and my job was to take his agenda and move it through Congress. And I think that we all can compare the last 3.5 years of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and the 4 years of prosperity we had under President Trump. And I'm proud to have played a critical role in that administration, helping shape and guide his policy. And I'm proud to have helped him pass the largest tax cuts in American history. I'm proud to have helped him deregulate to enable our businesses to thrive and flourish. And I'm proud to have worked with him to secure our border, which is continually under siege under this administration. And I'm very proud of that record. And I think that as a member of Congress, I'm certainly excited about taking that experience, leveraging that experience, and pursuing a legislative agenda that echoes all the success we had under President Trump's administration. So thank you for letting me visit with you all tonight, and look forward to this forum.
Thank you so much to both of you. We're going to start with our questions now. As we said, we'd reverse order, and so our first question is going to go to you, Mr. Jack.
Thank you. Mr. Jack, our question tonight is about the institution you are running to serve in and what kind of Congress you expect to serve in. It's very divided right now in the House, and if elected, what kind of congressional dynamic do you expect to serve in, and do you see a way beyond the deadlock we've seen in Congress the recent years, both between both parties?
Well, I think there's a lot of dysfunction in Congress now. I mean, if you look at charts of bills and legislation passed, it continually decreases, and I think that's in large part due to the lack of civility that we have in our country. Cross-party incivility, if you will, is a real threat. If it's a threat to our ability to govern as a country, and I want to lead by example. I mean, if you look at the campaign that I ran in my primary and my runoff election, I don't think there was a candidate more attacked than me, and I don't think you saw a more positive campaign than mine. And I think that uplifting, positive vision of our country is something that's really helpful. And at the same time, too, I think you want to lead by example. I'm the type of guy that wants to go into Congress, put my head down, not try to become famous, and really focus on the issues in our district and try to be a very accessible congressman for our district, because ultimately that's what you need. You're looking to elect someone to represent you in our federal government. You're looking to leverage that individual to ensure that your needs are met, and that's the type of person I want to be. I think if you elect more people with that approach and attitude, I think you're going to have a much more productive Congress, and I hope to be a part of that solution.
Thank you, Mr. Jack. Ms. Keller.
Well, I agree with everything that Brian just said. I think that's extremely important, that you have to be able to reach across the aisle. You can't be just staying in your own little lane, because we all have some great ideas, and we're not that far off on some of them. So when we find our commonalities, we can put them to the side. And then let's just start working on the differences, because on our ultimate goal is, we can't forget, it's the people in our district. Because when we work together, they're the ones that are going to end up succeeding, and they're going to do better with it. With me being in the military, there's no way that you can say, I'm not working with this person or I'm not working with that person. We've all got to continue to work together.
No, thank you.
Next question, we'll start with you, Ms. Keller. We'll talk about several issues-based, have several issues-based questions coming up. But let me ask you about one of the most important and unheralded responsibilities of holding congressional office, and that's constituent service. We have a very large district. You would have, as a congressman or congresswoman, a very large district. What would your approach be to provide the highest possible service for your 3rd District constituents?
Well, thank you. That to me is the biggest for me, because they are my eyes and my ears on the ground when I'm in DC. This is not a one-way street. They have got to talk to me so I understand what I need to do. And having the people here that are responsive, because I will tell you, If they are not responsive, they won't be working for me. And so them being able to send me the information that I need. So how do I go on a bill? Should I approve it? Should I go against it? It's my constituents that are going to be telling me what to do. And also, when I continue to hear the same things, it's what bills do I need to create? And so again, it's the back and forth, very responsive team back here, and that's what you'll expect from me.
Thank you, ma'am. Same question, Mr. Jack.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for all the viewers watching right now, you look at us and you look at any person seeking your vote around election time, and you wonder to yourself, will that person really follow through on their promises? Will that person really follow through on all the great things that they said? And I recognize that concern, because you elect somebody and then you feel they're disconnected from the community thereafter. So one of the things I talked about in the primary and the runoff, and continue to talk about and try to lead by example on, are holding town halls. It's been, I think, over a decade since we've had a town hall in person in our congressional district, and I want to have a series of town halls within the first year if elected to Congress. And last night I had a town hall in Barnesville, which went really well, in Lamar County, and made it back in time for the debate, which was fun to watch. But at the same time, I think that enables constituents to bring their concerns directly to me as a potentially your next congressman. And I think that you should challenge all of your elected officials to hold more town halls, make them feel more accountable to you, the voter, you, the constituent. I think you're going to find a lot better Congress, legislative body, or for whatever anybody's running. You'll find a lot more effectiveness if you have that direct access.
Would you like a rebuttal, Mrs.?
I agreed exactly what he said, but also, you know, I've got a really good communications team, and I think that's important. If whatever it is that I'm doing is to keep them informed at all times, you know, through newsletters or whatever.
Very good. Rebuttal, Mr. Jack.
No, thank you, sir.
All right.
Mr. Jack, last week, President Joe Biden announced $8 billion in military assistance to Ukraine to replace an equipment package expiring September 30th. On Sunday, the U.S. approved a new $567 million in defense and support for Taiwan. And also last week, it was reported that the U.S. has agreed to an $8.7 billion aid package to support its ongoing military efforts and to maintain that nation's qualitative military edge in the region. What is your view on the U.S. support of Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan? And what is your view on the U.S.'s role in the larger picture of these conflicts?
Sure. Well, I think that a lot of our constituents are frustrated because you feel that your tax dollars go overseas, and you feel like we have a lot of problems here at home. You feel like there's a problem on the southern border. You feel that your tax dollars aren't going to defending our border from illegal immigration pouring across it. You feel that our tax dollars are going overseas to countries. You feel that our tax dollars, your tax dollars, aren't being leveraged to their benefit. So for me, I'm a stalwart supporter of the U.S.-Israel relationship. I think that country is under siege. I'm hopeful that when we change a chief executive of our country, we're going to have a lot of these problems fixed. I can tell you, having worked by President Trump's side in the White House, been in the Situation Room with him during some really tense conversations with foreign leaders, I know that he was respected and he was feared by a lot of our adversaries. And I am a firm believer that if he's elected to office, you're going to have the war in Ukraine end, you're going to have China checked as it relates to Taiwan, and I'm very hopeful that our friend and partner and our strongest ally in the Middle East, Israel, is protected going forward, because it's invariably a very difficult thing to wake up every morning and worry about a rocket hitting your home.
Thank you. Ms. Keller.
Well, we've got to continue with Ukraine. 76% of Americans say they want to continue that. We are only using between 5 and 6% of our defense budget to fund Ukraine. If we don't, Putin is going to continue going after he gets Ukraine or whatever he wants. He's going to continue throughout that area. He wants Poland. He wants the Baltics. So we've got to make sure it stops. Right now, we're not, other than the part of the defense budget that we're given, we do not, no soldiers. We're not losing anybody right now. But if he attacks our allies, we're going to do Article 5. We're going to now have to be part of this war, and we're going to have to be sending our service members over there. We don't want to do that. And so I agree with our allies, especially with Israel. It's just not Israel and then forget Ukraine. We got to do them all. They are our allies. We protect them. We support them.
Any rebuttal?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
The Pew Research Center, using newly released U.S. Census Bureau data, reported, I think it was just last month, that the U.S. immigrant population grew by approximately 1.6 million people in 2023, the largest one-year increase since 2000. Pew noted that the total immigrant population in the U.S. rose to 47.8 million, up from 46.2 just the year before. Of that immigrant population, Pew concluded nearly 3/4 of those immigrants living in the U.S. in 2022 and 23 were naturalized U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, or lawful temporary residents. 1 in 4 immigrants that were in the country unlawfully, although estimates on that population vary widely. I throw those numbers out because this is an enormous touchstone with a lot of moving parts. We heard it in the vice presidential debate just last night. Tell me, immigration, particularly illegal immigration, what's your view on the state of our current immigration system? What are the solutions? Ms. Keller.
So yes, it is broken. And we did have a chance to kind of fix it. Was the plan perfect? Absolutely not. But we could have put in place that we had the most conservative, one of the most conservative Republicans come up with a plan with an independent and a Democrat. It showed that what the American people have been talking about, we could have made changes. We could have given them more border patrol. And even the border patrol were happy with the plan that we had. So more border patrol, more officers for asylum seekers. We would have stopped the catch and release. So there was various parts of it. And then Donald Trump, when he heard that we were going to pass it, he said no. And then during one of his rallies, he went out and said, please blame me. So there was he did not want to fix this problem. He wants to use this as an issue to run for re-election.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Jack.
Well, I think one of the challenges we have with illegal immigration in our country right now is that for the last 3.5 years, we've had this open, porous border. And we did not have that during President Trump's administration. And I think that because he had a tough border policy, a tough border security. And I think that's imperative, because when we look at some of the crimes that have been inflicted upon our communities, when you look in Athens, Georgia, Laken Riley would still be here were it not for an illegal immigrant crossing our country, coming from Venezuela up through Mexico into our country. There's a reason why murders are down in Venezuela right now, and I think that's in large part because a lot of the bad folks are coming up through our southern border. I firmly believe there are a few policy opportunities that we have our next Congress to enact to ensure we have that secure border. Maura mentioned catch and release. I mean, the notion of apprehending an illegal immigrant, releasing them into our community, and telling them to come back in a couple years for their court date is madness. We must end catch and release. We must remain in Mexico, something you hear a lot about. If you're seeking asylum in our country, you should wait in Mexico until your court case is adjudicated. You shouldn't be given a one-way ticket to the area of your choosing. We need to strengthen our border patrol, and more importantly, we've got to do everything we possibly can to ensure our law enforcement has every tool at its disposal to ensure our communities are safe and that our communities are protected from all the violence that comes from our southern border.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Keller, rebuttal?
So there's no proof when they were talking about, right now they can only show that 25% of the crime rate in Venezuela is down. And there is no proof to show that the Venezuelans are coming here creating crime, mayhem, rape, and whatever. So the other one is with Trump's last border, we still have 1,400 children that have not been reunited with their families. And one of the things that we have to do is finally find a way for DACA to have that pathway to citizenship. We use them as political pawns every election season, and we've finally got to put that one to rest.
Mr. Jack?
No, thank you.
All right. Move on to our next question.
Thank you. Mr. Jack, with the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, the responsibility for regulating reproductive rights has shifted back to the states. What is your stance on how we should approach women's health care and reproductive rights, and how would you balance the autonomy of state decision-making with ensuring the access to health care for all women?
Well, I'm a strict constitutionalist. I believe that if a power is not enumerated in the Constitution, it should be left to the states. I obviously worked with President Trump to help appoint conservative judges up and down the federal bench. They did something that many legal scholars thought would never be possible, and that's overturning Roe v. Wade. And in so doing, it enables the states to make decisions. And I think ultimately it gives an opportunity for the folks within our community to petition your state legislator, petition your state government to ensure that the the rights that you want are reflected as the legislature should reflect the will of its constituents. So I think it's something that we need to get back to in Congress. There's way too much of Congress legislation that doesn't actually apply to what the Constitution intended for Congress to do. And if that power is not enumerated into the Constitution, I think it should be left to the states, particularly since, of course, the Supreme Court in 2022 struck down Roe v. Wade.
Ms. Keller.
And even though we had our Supreme Courts, when they were being interviewed, stated that this was stare decisis, that this was settled law, that they weren't going to overturn it. And look what they did. They went ahead and overturned it. When we bring this back down to the state level, well, look what happened. We had 2 women that ended up dying. These were preventable deaths, but we knew that it was predictable, because when they overturned Roe v. Wade, we knew it was just a matter of time before women were going to die. The other thing is, you know, women in reproductive health in Georgia, in my district, there are 6 counties that do not have OBGYN care. Women have to go to other counties. Women have to, so we're putting an undue burden on the doctors that we do have. And again, going back to the maternal mortality rate for women, our Black women are dying more in childbirth.
Just one thing I'd like to touch on there. You mentioned the counties and the deficit for healthcare. I think that's one of the things when we look across our district, as you noted, it's a massive district. You've got 15 or portions of up to 15 counties. Some will say it's the size of Delaware. And in so doing, you've got a lot of areas within our district that don't have the opportunities that some of us here in Coweta or in my home county of Fayette have. So when we look to expanding, and this is a broader answer on healthcare, but expanding rural healthcare, ensuring that doctors in a lot of these areas are able to treat patients so that if you live in Meriwether County or you live in Lamar County, you don't have to go a couple counties over in order to see a doctor. I think that's something our next congressman or congresswoman should be focused on. And I think rural health care is something that is often overlooked in this country, but something that I'd like to lead on if elected to Congress.
Thank you very much.
I think she has a rebuttal.
Oh, it's the same thing when it comes to rural health care, because we've had so many hospitals that have closed. And if you have an emergency, there's no way that you should have to wait to be able to get life-saving care.
Thank you, Ms. Keller.
Very well, move on to our next. Going to go to you first, Ms. Keller, in this question. There are several estimates out there of the size of the current U.S. debt, although most agree that it exceeded U.S. GDP in 2020 and is set to do so again in coming years. According to the Congressional Budget Office, ongoing U.S. annual deficits probably going to total about $1.6, perhaps $1.7 trillion in fiscal year 2024. I believe that's still correct. And more or less will continue to grow in the coming years and steadily thereafter unless spending is changed, unless congressional spending is reformed. What is your view of the U.S. deficit spending and debt? What challenges are before us as a nation because of it, and what steps, if any, would you favor in balancing the national budget?
Okay. So, well, it's hard to balance the budget. The Democrats have done a great job when they have been in power, but every time a Republican comes on in, they add extra that then the next person that comes in. So we end up having, or should I say Joe Biden, ended up absorbing a very, how do I say this? He ended up getting a lot of debt from Trump. Okay, he inherited a lot of debt, and a lot of that came from the tax cut and the Tax Cut and the Jobs Act. You know, where they thought that the trickle-down effect was going to happen. They gave corporations big tax cuts. They gave them bonuses, and because they gave them the tax cuts, we don't have extra money that's going back into the coffers. One of the things that they did was to make sure that that stayed, so the people we're not going to be able to get that money back.
Very well. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Jack.
Well, this is one area where we may respectfully disagree on economic policy. I was a proud proponent of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 because it unleashed America's economic potential. The economy was booming in our country before COVID hit in February of 2022, and I think that's in large part due to those, well, actually there's in large part due to a few things, but enabling the corporate tax rate to be reduced to a level where it should be to enable companies to hire more employees, pay better wages, and invest more in our communities, and likewise cutting the individual tax rate, enabling middle-class families to have more money in their pockets. I mean, ultimately, philosophically, that's what I want. I want more money in your pocket and less money in the government's pocket, and that's something our next Congress is going to be uniquely facing, is the expiration of some of those tax cuts. I'm a proud supporter and proud proponent of the tax cuts that were enacted in 2017 and want to see us build upon that and enact even more tax cuts in 2025. When it comes to paying off the federal debt, I think that is, without question, a massive concern for a lot of folks, especially as you look to your children and grandchildren. You don't want them saddled with the debt from generations before. If we can unleash our economy, drastically shrink the size of government, cut needless governments and governmental agencies, we can finally put our children in a position to be prosperous and our grandchildren and many, many other generations to come.
Ms. Keller, rebuttal?
So the tax cuts that he was talking about, we have a sunset right now for those lower and the middle income, and what's happening is that's going to expire, but the ones that are not paying their fair share in taxes, they're set. They don't have to pay those taxes. So the American people don't mind paying their taxes. They just want to make sure everybody pays their fair share.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Jack?
No, thank you.
All right. I think unless you have anything more, that concludes our questions within the time frame we agreed to. So we're going to move on to our closing statements. I just want to take a moment before we move on to those. Thank you both for running for this important office and for coming out here tonight to share your views with us. We'll go in the same order that we started. And so, Ms. Keller, your closing statement, up to 2 minutes, please, ma'am.
So in this election, we're deciding what kind of future you want for our district, for our country, and for our democracy. The choice is clear. We will be led by a candidate who has dedicated their life to serving our nation with honor and integrity, or by someone who has been loyal to one person, and that's Donald Trump. I've spent 20 years in the military fighting for our freedoms and protecting our values to make America strong. I know the firsthand importance of leadership when it's focused on the needs of the people and the desire, and not the desires of one man. Our economy needs leaders who will fight for the working families, create jobs, and lower the cost, not giving tax breaks to the wealthy while adding trillions to the national debt. On immigration, we need policies to secure our border while in reflecting the values of fairness and humanity that our country was built on. When it comes to reproductive rights, I defend the fundamental freedoms of women to make their own healthcare decisions. We cannot have extremism, blind loyalty, or division. We have got to ensure, especially with President Trump running, he disrespects our military and the policies with our allies, where our allies are questioning his leadership. I'm here to serve you. I'm here to give you real solutions within this district and to make sure that our government remains accountable to the people. I've spent my life with service to the country, and I'm asking the opportunity to serve you in Congress. Together, we can ensure a future that has strength, fairness, and democracy for all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Jack, your closing statement.
Well, thank you for giving us an opportunity to share with you our vision, and I'm very privileged to have the opportunity to stand before you as the Republican nominee for our congressional district. As I've said before, and as I've tried to lead by example, I've run probably the most positive campaign in the history of our state, and I'm going to continue to do so because I believe that leaders should lead by example, and in so doing, we should ensure that you hear from us what we want to do for you and not try to tear anybody else down to bring ourselves up. I've had the privilege, as I noted, of not just growing up here, but having the chance to work at some of the highest levels of our government. And I did work right by President Trump's side from the first to last day of his administration, and was incredibly proud of all the work we did throughout that administration. And likewise, very proud of the work I've done with Dr. Ben Carson and what we've done for some of the underprivileged children across our country. But As it relates to our commitment to you, the voter, as I said before, I want to lead by example. I want to have town halls across our district. I want you to find me to be the most accessible congressman in America if you elect me, and I want you to have the chance to tell me if you think I'm doing a good job or a bad job. I should stand in front of you and take whatever you say, because ultimately I serve you, the constituent. I don't serve anybody else but you, and I'm very proud of that. When it comes to my plan going forward on the economy, I want us to unleash America's energy potential. I want us to deregulate. That's one of the things that's least often talked about, but perhaps the most important is cutting needless regulations, onerous regulations that disable you, small business owners, from being successful. I want us to pass those tax cuts and reenact many of those tax cuts that are set to expire in 2025, because I think more money in your pockets is better than more money in the government's pockets. When it comes to our border, I want to secure our border as tight as it's ever been and ensure that in doing so, we can protect our communities and ensure that we enable the American worker to compete for fair wages in our country and not have to compete with illegal immigrants that try to undercut those wage offers. And when it comes to our foreign policy, you're going to have in me a strong supporter of Israel, but at the same time, a congressman that wants to focus more on our government needs here in our country as opposed to the needs of others across the world. So with that, very grateful for the opportunity to spend time with you and look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks again to both of our candidates, Maura Keller and Brian Jack, for coming out and sharing that with us tonight. I want to take just a moment and thank, of course, the Chamber of Commerce for organizing this and for our sponsor, AT&T. And special thanks to the student interns here at the Central Educational Center who have this setting prepared for us and have allowed this broadcast to go forward. Thank you again for joining us, and we hope you tune into our other forums as you make the decision about how you'd like to vote in 2024.